So, we're talking initiative right now. And to summarize, we were looking at the three current major approaches. The most major being the D20, which is super easy to use. You have your basic plus that you're going to get every time you roll. You roll one D20, you add that plus. The person with the biggest number gets to act first. Super straightforward and easy and quick to get into combat with. Just one roll, but good God, is it boring, and it takes all the strength, advantage, and fun out of playing a fast character. Shadowrun high value. So they have a 10-point initiative cost, basically. And as long as you have points, you can spend it. As long as you're not negative, you get to act and subtract 10. When you're negative, you stop acting for that round. So if you're super fast, you can get like a 25 and get to act 3 times.
Which is really powerful.
And super cool. And really does represent how fucking fast people can get in that world. And then World of Darkness, which is more of a modern setting. And it's interesting because this is like a more of a historical setting, like a fantasy setting, a future setting, and a modern setting that we're looking at here with these 3 games for the different approaches. World of Darkness being more modern to account for guns and speed and fun stuff like that. The person who wins the initiative declares his action last so that he knows what everyone else is doing when he declares what he's going to do. Now, I'm going to say...
Which is also extremely strong.
I'm going to say straight off that the WAD one is the most appealing to our system. Because of the way our combat is designed to be told as a story. If you get to design what you're going to do last, that is where most of your skill use is going to be useful, especially defensive skills. If somebody gets the drop on you and is faster than you and can move in before you can really react defensively, those skills aren't going to be super useful.
You would still get the stat bonus, which is why you would spec into it in the first place. But you wouldn't be able to say, okay, well, I see this attack coming, so I'm going to parry it and step towards his back.
Yep. That's why that is so strong, because it essentially becomes your attack for that round. But then when you get to the point where you can use it as an attack, that's dumb. And that's...
But you still have to Delta 5, which is not easy to do.
You have to Delta 5, and you have to be level 5, like Grandmaster ability in that. But having fought somebody who was a level 5 in martial arts, at martial arts, that is what it's like. I was probably a 2, and he was a 5. And he punched me so fast that my eyes could barely recognize that an attack was coming. My body had absolutely no time to respond to it, and I was on the floor.
I too have experienced this.
So
except in my case, it may have slightly involved a wooden sword to the head.
Mine was a quick punch to the solar plexus that knocked me back 4 feet.
Both not terribly fun.
No, not fun at all. My head landed between my knees, and then I laid there for like a couple minutes as he went, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?"
And then you're like, I can breathe again. Martial arts. No better way to learn than by getting your ass kicked.
Yeah.
So, I also like the Shadowrun system. I do. And how do we want to decide initiative? Roll some d6 with a quick plus and then subtract a value for each one. We can act reversely each round. Might make combat take a little while, but combat's kind of the focus then. It allows you to get nitty-gritty and refined in it.
I think it might be a bit too much, though.
Yeah, I think it depends on, like this is something we'll probably have to, like I said, it'll be fine on paper, but implementation might be different depending on like how many enemies we're going to want, because then that scaling is going to be kind of brutal, where it's like, do we want to have big encounters? Do we want to have small encounters? You know, do we want to have things where, you know, we're just going to be rolling a whole lot of dice, or do we want to just have it be something kind of simple where the DM or the GM can just, you know, quickly just look at the stats and be able to determine what their initiative is going to be?
So
I guess question one. Questions.
Do we want to roll?
Yeah.
is the
want
first question.
variability / a roll?
And I'm sort of leaning towards no at the moment.
Yeah, I'm kind of. It was something that I've never really liked too much, was the ability to roll for it, because it doesn't, like when you're someone who, you know, feel like you're quick or something like that. You know, chances are you're gonna get a higher initiative, but you know, having that bit of RNG in there was always a bit. I don't know. It always felt like when you rolled bad, you were like, well, kind of, you know, what happened, right? Like I'm supposed to be good. Always found the approach where they're still rolling, but it's just done with the enemies behind the DM screen, and he just lets you know what the initiative is, because in that way, even though most of the time you're still higher initiative, you don't feel like you're, you know, you failed, and when you don't get a top initiative as the, you know, the fastest person, like you've just screwed yourself right out of the gate. You're just like, oh, this thing might actually be better than me. You're not too sure why it's, you know, got the drop on you.
My knee jerk to having the enemies be rolled for, but you not, is that seems like an overcomplication.
Yeah.
Like the players don't roll, it's just the DM determines it, right? Like the DM with their screen kind of idea is like they're just going to tell the players what the initiative order comes out to be, without having them be the ones who are contributing factors besides just their stats, and whether that's, you know, a roll for that, or, you know, because he decides kind of what the enemy's stats are going to be in that regard, and what's influencing that is kind of the gist of it. Is mostly just I'd rather just have the DM tell what the initiative roll is once that happens.
I was thinking originally the opposite, have the players roll and the monsters not be rolled for. Because there's typically a lot more enemies than there is players. It's easy for each of the players to make their own roll, and it is nice to have some agency in your own fate by getting to roll your own dice.
But at the same time, getting fucked by a dice roll is not fun.
I agree, but we're also taking the 1 to 20 massive range with a small plus away from the D20 system and going to a normalized D6 dice pool.
It's going to be, I think it's might be a bit weird to try to balance that for players rolling their own initiative.
That's my experience. That's my thought as well. And I don't like that idea. I don't want to go with that idea, but that was my first thought, was the opposite of it. But I decided I don't like one rolling and one not. I definitely don't like having to roll for all the monsters with the players not rolling, because if you're going to roll for one, might as well roll for all of them, because while the DM's figuring out, the players can each grab their few D6 and roll it by themselves.
Yeah, it wasn't so much like each individual monster, it's mostly just like
squad rolling.
Kind of like a group thing, like he rolls like as a group of the enemies that rolled up on them, like what was, you know, their average initiative against them, and then the players, whatever stat it is that they have for initiative, just balances through that.
Yeah.
You know, so it's...
I kind of see it as... I kind of like the idea of not a roll, but variability through static modifiers. So like the aggressor, the person who initiates, the team that initiates combat might get a +5 for the opening round because they initiated. Just to the raw value, just random values off the top of my head to give examples, you know. If they initiated combat, they get a +5, but the other team was like in an actual Overwatch, you know, like guard situation waiting, they might have a +10 for being aware and ready. So you get that attack. You were there. You were ready. You guys were ready to go. You kind of popped up, so you get your bonus. But they were literally like on guard and trained and stationed and ready and waiting for an attack to come. So they get their own bonus. It kind of negates things, balances things out in places. You could use negatives at certain times for being surprised, being asleep, being in a sticky situation, being in a tight areas, stuff like that. There's no limit to what we could think of as being our choice of modifiers. It doesn't have to be super complicated. We can keep the chart small. If we could keep the modifiers down to a little thing that you can look at any given time, it's not too hard to kind of know what your roll will be at any time. Not roll, but your value will be at that round.
So while you were talking about that, I did a little bit of background thinking. I really like the static value system. Really, 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 really like it. I think the big thing will be deciding on what numbers we want to use in the static value and how, if at all, they're tied to stats and skills. Because I think we've got strength and precision right now as sort of our physical fitness skills. And if we are to use, strength plus precision as your reflex score or your precision, your initiative score, or whatever we end up calling it, the values will be fairly normalized because people and enemies are both going to be either hard into one, very little in the other, or a distribution of both, which will be fairly equal, and that will end up at a lot of the same average numbers. We could then work with a +1 or a +2 for being the initiator, a +2 or a +3 for having Overwatch, and that might be specifically to the character that is overwatching rather than the whole group, and sort of work from there. And I would generally say that I prefer giving bonuses to giving negatives.
I agree, though I do believe some situations truly call for negatives.
Yeah, I'm not, hard and fast on don't give negatives. Negatives are bad. But I feel like for the most point, like say your group is asleep and you've got one guard that is on Overwatch. That one guard will be able to know that the enemy attack is coming. They will have their initiative roll and they will probably have a bonus because they're on Overwatch. So they wouldn't be sort of screwed over by the bonus to being the initiator that the enemy group would have. And they also have the bonus of, being awake and they're not doing anything, versus the people who are asleep that will lose the Overwatch bonus. So they won't get the Overwatch bonus. They won't get any of their, being the initiator bonus. And the way that that balances out just in my head will be fairly sensible.
I don't disagree. Does mental play any role in initiative?
Not the way that we've got our stats set out.
Okay.
Like if we had or if we thought of some way that, preparedness and awareness will fit into our mental stats, then I think it would make sense.
You could call those wisdom.
You could, but we could also just make it a skill.
Yeah.
Like you could just get a flat buff to your initiative value. So if you're a mage and you take, awareness as a skill, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to your initiative.
I like that. I like filling a lot of the holes with skills because it simplifies so much.
And the skills are very flexible because they're not really constrained by anything.
I think it's a good balance.
Okay. So, number 2. We didn't come up with a number question at the time, so I'm just going to throw down. Do we want to go in reverse order for turns?
My knee jerk is yes.
I really like yes myself. It is going to add complexity, but sometimes complexity is worth it.
And I think in this case, the way we've designed our combat system, it makes a lot of sense to go in reverse order. Because you're telling a story of what you're doing in that turn. And you can tell a more complete story when you know what everybody else is doing.
I think this is one of those areas where our complexity plays into the strengths of the system that we're making. And I think it's worth at least playtesting it.
Agree.
There's no disagree from Pseudo. Okay. Do we want to give it? Yes. Just yes.
Very quick answer. So I'm thinking basically we just steal what WAD does. Declare lowest declares first, highest declares last, and then all of the actions happen.
Yeah, all at the same time. And then what you can declare and what the things you can say that you're doing in that spot are based on the skills you have.
Yes.
Which just kind of makes a lot of sense. Do we want multiple actions for high enough values? Shadowrun style.
Want? Yes. Think it'll work? I don't know. Pseudo, do you have any thoughts on this one? I'm kind of on like 3 different fences right now.
Yeah.
Multiple actions, like that's in regard to just initiative. Like if you're initiative enough, you get to just have another turn.
Basically.
Yeah.
I'm thinking the value is 6 for playtest off the top of my head, which means math is interesting, but the values are never going to be crazy high. At most, you're going to get 3.
I don't know. I think it gets a bit tricky. I think that's something more for skill, because I think initiative is like, your perception of the battle, and I think is a limit to like, how fast you could have noticed and how fast you can actually do things. Where if you just have really good initiative and you're a slower character, I don't know if that makes sense that you just get to go twice. I think it's more
I
of a
actually think it would be
thing.
kind of overpowered with the getting to declare last as well. And if you play it out, it doesn't play well, because if one guy wins the initiative and has just enough to get 2 turns, he goes last and then gets another action without anybody having a response. And then there's no reverse description. It makes it hard to figure out roles. or you have to give them a free description to how they're going to try to respond, and yeah. No, does not play well.
Yeah, I want it because I really like that system, but I don't think it will work.
You can also do a delay system, sacrificing initiative points for a higher initiative value next turn. Yep. I already had that, some thoughts of that bumbling around in the back of the brain.
Let's discuss what a turn would look like if we had a delay system. Somebody rolls up on you and attacks you. Your what? Your initiative is, let's say, 5. Your initiative is 5. Their initiative is 4, but they get the initiator bonus, which puts them at 6. So their attack is going to come through first.
Which means you have to say what you're doing first.
You have to say what you have. They say what.
You lost.
Yeah, so
you say what you're doing first.
You say what you're doing, but that doesn't make any sense. Well, you would know that they're initiating combat in the game.
Yep.
So you would know that you're gonna parry or block or whatever.
Or even if it's a more futuristic and modern engagement with a gun. It could just be you're looking at a bush and, combat started. What do you do?
Yeah, but that gets a little meta, right?
Like, it does, because you shouldn't really know that combat's coming there.
They would need to delay before whose declaration?
Before their declaration.
But then they need to know that combat has started already.
So in that situation, I guess combat doesn't start until all parties are aware. So it would really start with a free attack if you're that unaware. If it's a ranged opening, that would just be a free attack. After you get hit, it would be, you've been hit, you've been shot from this bush, combat has started, what do you want to do? And then you have the information to take agency of the play and describe what you're going to do. You don't know where the target is necessarily. You could fire blindly into the bush, or you could run and try to take some cover, but that is the point at which you need to make a combat decision.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that little corner of problems has been taken care of. So let's go back to a simpler example of melee combat. Somebody charges at you with a stick. They're going to hit you with a stick. You go, shit, I don't want to be hit with that stick. And you have one less initiative than them in this situation. So would you at that point not get to react?
Yep. You'd be opting not to react.
How would you opt to not react? You don't have initiative to be able to do a thing.
You could say something. Yeah, like I brace for the hit and prepare to counter next time. But again, they're going to hit you, and when you go to do the return swing, they're going to have just as much of a chance to respond, and they're probably going to be faster than you.
No, because in this situation, remember, they're getting the attacker's bonus. So they would only get that in the first round.
But
so they're currently at 6, then they lose their attacker bonus. Now they're slower than you.
Well, at that point, the delay would be completely worthless. You would just want to say, I brace and defend, prepare to block, dodge, whatever, their attack.
Delay would always be the initiator's choice. Well, that's one of the things that we're trying to avoid. Yeah. We're trying to avoid things that are just on one side.
Simplest rule set, so you don't have to consider all your situations.
So the attacker, you you don't have initiative to do anything about it. You get hit. You get hit with a stick. You go, ow, fuck. And then for the next round, you now have higher initiative than the enemy. The enemy is standing in front of you with their stick. They say, I'm going to hit him again. They're getting ready to hit you with that stick again. If you then said, I'm going to, not use my initiative that I have, I'm going to only respond defensively, would that then leave you with bonus initiative for the next turn?
You can't use a portion of initiative because there's no value or cost on actions.
Yeah, I'm struggling to see how delay
I think just
would
because
work
of
other than
how,
Overwatch.
just because of how our actual initiative system works, delay kind of is a part of it already due to the way the story is told. It's just if you have initiative, then you can respond to their direct actions, and if you don't have initiative, you say how you're preparing for their direct actions you think are coming, or making your own action. So you're kind of describing your delay in your preparation. Either way, it's the initiative is essentially amounts to what you're doing in that moment of time. Can you really push up your next action other than like an Overwatch kind of idea where when I'm watching for this and when this happens, I do this? I think that's how the delay would be implemented, at which point you're not delaying your turn to a later point, you're declaring what you're ready for.
Yeah, you're prepping an action versus adding a delay to what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think prepping an action makes more sense because I know in other systems you are able to, if you have the highest initiative, you are able to kind of defer and do a reactionary kind of step for stuff like that. But most of the time it's like I'm going to wait for what my team does, or I'm going to wait to see what, they do. But when they do their action, I still get initiative on the reaction to them kind of idea. But I think we just have to make it so that it's explicit. They don't just get to say like, I'm going to chill. There still needs to be like some intent.
Yeah.
So that if it's a completely different thing, they don't get to just, if it's something they weren't aware of or not seeing, like, someone shooting at them from behind, they don't get to, all of a sudden say, well, I'm going to, move behind cover kind of thing and do that. It's going to be like, there's a guy in front of you and, you can see him and you have initiative and you want to just take a reactionary stance or a prep stance. And, if he starts, throwing a knife at you, or if he, starts running at you, or if he starts, running away, then you can, react accordingly.
The nice thing about our system, though, Pseudo, is if you lost the initiative, is when you have to prep an action ahead of time. If you win the initiative, you know what they're doing and get to act, which is so much better. Simultaneous actions don't lend themselves too well to an initiative system. Plays better in a multi-actions per turn system. So higher initiative essentially means more actions to take. You always need to have an initiative implementation, though. Even if it's multiple actions at the same time, you still need to know how to order them. Like, just because they happen at the same time doesn't mean everybody says them at the same time. Right?
It's just everybody shouting at the DM.
Yeah.
But did we answer your question about the delay system? Do you feel like we discussed that, or did we sort of miss the point? Because it's entirely possible that you're thinking something that I didn't.
So So you weren't talking about delay your action until later. Maybe be more specific what you mean then by delay system. But I'm in the heading of, do we want to delay your a way to delay your action until later? I'm going to say no. The initiative system works in such a way that this does not play well.
Thank you.
Can't really delay for simultaneous actions. Yeah. But
Yeah.
we do have a way to prep actions, which is essentially the same thing. Just more onus on the player to be aware and an agent of his character at all times, which is really what we want. That's really more immersive, isn't it?
It's certainly one of our design goals for this system is to have the player have the agency rather than the rule system confining what you can do.
Yeah. No. We've designed it in such a way that if you ever say I attack, the GM will literally look at you and say, "How?"
What do you do though?
So I guess we can rough table out.
You were thinking more of an action queue. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense if we were queuing up actions like D20 does. But we're sort of doing the inverse of that, where everybody acts at the same time. It's just the person with the highest initiative knows what everybody else is doing when they're setting up their actions.
Yeah. Think of it as being quick and sharp enough to notice what other people are doing and then react in time. Which is a super valuable hockey skill.
Super valuable everything skill, honestly.
Yeah.
Being
pretty
observant and fast.
Yeah. That's what a deke is in hockey, is just winning the initiative. Initiative. Sorry system. Thank you for correcting me. Modifier table sample. So we had let's call it,
We had the attacker's advantage.
yeah.
Could just call it Peeker's advantage, go all meta. But the attacker's advantage would be
Aggressor advantage.
Yeah, aggressor advantage is better. A +2 to the first turn with the numbers that we're currently using.
Okay, I want to call the other one on guard. I think that's the best way to explain it.
Yeah, rather than using a loaded term like Overwatch.
Yeah. You said that's like a +4.
That's what I was thinking.
It's fine. It's all test values, right? We see how it plays and go from there. But I do agree that being on guard should be more of an advantage than being an aggressor. What about a surprise attack is just an automatic attack before combat starts, so.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, what about surprised opponent?
How so? Describe the situation, please. I do not understand.
You've just surprise attacked the enemy. Combat has started. That surprise attack is not going to allow your enemy to get the complete benefit of his, like say you're the aggressor and you charge into the room and they were on guard. You're now at a +2 and they're at a +4.
Yes.
Because they were on guard and they were ready for an attack. And you were kind of ready, you were charging in, but you're charging in and they're like established and set up. So they get the benefit. Now let's say instead of just blowing through that wall, you launched an arrow through and hit somebody. That causes a little bit of chaos as you charge in.
So at that point, you would no longer have your aggressor advantage because
No, you're
they
still
know
the-
that an attack is there.
But you're still the aggressor. You still initiated the attack, so you get your aggressor benefit for that first turn. So
Right,
what if
but the first turn's already over at this point.
No, that's the first turn beginning. Because there's an attack to initiate combat. They don't get a response to that first ranged attack, remember? That's like the surprise attack. That starts combat. So basically, I guess it's if you had started combat with a surprise attack rather than with a face pull.
Yeah. So if you had started combat with a surprise attack...
Well, if they always get the aggressor...
Hold on. If you've started combat with a surprise attack, the aggressor and on guard bonuses do not apply. Because there's just... It doesn't happen. Like there's no benefit for being on guard. There's no benefit from being the aggressor because the combat has begun without them being able to respond at all. If you're attacking and a surprised opponent at that point, they're going to be aware that you're there. They're going to be aware that they are under attack, but because they were surprised, they don't get their on guard bonus. They weren't ready enough, essentially.
So basically, on guard is only if they haven't been surprised. The surprised, then they're no longer on guard. They're now responding to an attack. It's kind of how you're saying it. So you would get a +2 and they get nothing?
Yeah.
Is that more complicated to have to remember an extra rule for on guard where it won't apply sometimes and will apply sometimes if they were on guard than giving an additional bonus for a surprise attack on top of aggressor?
I think it is less complicated, but I think we may not be on the same page on how these bonuses are working. Because I am envisioning these as first turn only bonuses.
Yep.
So I'm not sure how surprise attack fits into this. Can you explain better?
Okay, so both parties are ready to attack. I'm going to do the same thing where you were talking, right? Both parties are ready to attack. One's on guard. One's about to charge in. They make a surprise attack to initiate combat. So after that first hit is when everybody becomes aware that combat started. Because an attack was made, they get the surprise attack bonus. They were on guard, so they're going to get the on guard bonus for their first turn still. You don't have to remember it, whether they got attacked or not. It's just they were on guard, they got the bonus. We're aggressor, we get the bonus, always, period. We make a surprise attack to open it, essentially cancels their on guard bonus. If they weren't on guard, sitting around a campfire, and we make a surprise attack to open, now we get a +6 to their 0. Whereas they would have had a +4 if they were on guard.
Okay, I think I'm understanding what you're saying. So in this situation, it would be, you've got your troop of combatants outside an enemy encampment.
Yep.
Sort of deal. And you initiate combat by having somebody snipe in and hit one of the enemies.
Yep.
As part of that turn, or as part of the subsequent initial turn of combat,
correct,
you would get both the aggressor advantage and the surprise attack advantage, which nullifies their on guard status.
Correct.
Or gives you a big bonus.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand the situation now, and I agree.
Okay. I think it's just simpler than saying they were on guard, but they got a surprise, so we remove this bonus, and you're adding and subtracting things. It's just apply the bonuses and negate for that turn. And people that were not on guard and are just completely taken by surprise are just kind of fucked for that round.
Then you're just screwed.
and they should be. They should be. They're caught completely flat-footed in a surprise attack.
Yeah.
Okay. What other bonuses are we thinking for initiative?
My Tarkov brain is taking over on how we could use like this little system that we've just created in order to role play like a modern military engagement, and I think it'll actually work quite well.
That's my goal. Combat is combat. If you design it properly, you can put any weapon into it.
So these modifiers, this is just for like environmental stuff, right? Like
Yes. Direct initiative modifiers. This is like the little table that we would print out and give a card to each person with like 8 to 10 things that are going to affect initiative.
I don't even think we need that many. I think like 4 or 5 will be fine.
yeah.
Yeah,
The only one,
it's just an example. Like nothing outside of this should really be considered. Keep it nice and simple, but keep it varied enough within the little bit that they have that there is some actual variance in combat.
the only thing is I can
don't
really
want too much memorization.
Yeah, only other things I can really think of, which may just be too out of scope too, is just like environmental variables, right? Like, depending where they are, and like if there's like, if it's foggy, if it's misty, if you're on the high ground and they're on the low ground, you're gonna have more advantage in regards to being able to see all of them than they are going to be able to see you, or figure out where you are, or even just something like noise profile and stuff like that. But I think that's probably a bit out of scope.
I do like the fog and whatnot is all impaired vision stuff. Limited vision in some way. There's different things we can do that.
Is that not covered by our advantage disadvantage though?
Yeah, this is mostly just in the context of like getting an initiative. Like, if you can like hear them coming, kind of a thing, right? And you set up for like an ambush. But I guess that's mostly just aggressor advantage. I'm not sure if we wanted to add anything else on top of that, or just have that just be the aggressor advantage and surprise attack, and just keep it simple for now. And
I guess
anything else we want to do later, we'll just put in, like Rach said, into our advantage disadvantage sense.
if we want to keep it as all pluses, enemy vision impaired could be something to look at. Enemy blinded, something to look at. We can think of it that way, because that would give you a better chance of getting the drop on the enemy, a better chance of getting first approach at the enemy. Or we could look at it as missing a sense. You could say blinded / deaf is one really worse, that a lot worse than the other. I guess it depends on the approach. At that point, it depends on if the GM wants to apply it. How much depends on the GM do we want?
A lot, because we're working on the system. The way that I'm thinking of this vision impaired or blinded / deaf is like, okay, well, door breach situation, you pitch a flashbang in there. It isn't technically an attack, but it will give you additional advantage on your subsequent attack through the door breach. But at the same time, that's covered under surprise attack and aggressor advantage.
Well, you get the surprise attack bonus just for the chaos caused by blowing in the door, even. And that's fair, but I do think a flashbang is additional advantage beyond the door blowing in and people breaching in.
Right, but that it's an advantage because it's causing status effects on the enemy.
That's true. That's true. I guess, is it affecting their ability to respond in time? That's the specifics. Not their ability to respond, period, which it does, but their ability to respond in time, which is what initiative is.
And I think like pitching a flashbang through the door, shut the door, like flashbang, door shut, okay, off you go, is extremely effective because it would get you the aggressor advantage. It would neutralize any on guard that they had because they've been surprised and are now blind and deaf. So they won't be able to do anything about the flashbang. Plus, you get your surprise advantage. And then also you've got the status effects on the enemies of blind and deaf, which will make them effectively unable to react at all.
But they can still act. And it's not affecting how quickly they can act. It's just the only action they can do in that time is fire their gun into a wall and hope they don't hit a teammate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they don't actually play a role in initiative.
The same thing would apply, I think, in any situation where you're able to sow chaos prior to engaging in combat. So I think...
But initiative isn't just for prior to engaging, it's also for during engagement.
Right, but we're just talking about modifiers right now.
Yeah, modifiers happen during engagement too, though.
Not these ones.
Not these specific ones that we're talking here.
So I'm struggling to find anything that would affect initiative inside combat. Because like any poison that's going to slow your enemy down would take a while to take effect.
Well, at that point, it's just going to be also there. I guess we could look at external modifiers too. Skills to modify, heighten and lower initiative as per. But you shouldn't, what about footing? Terrain that you're standing on?
Should affect your ability to react, but not the speed at which you do it.
Initiative really that simple?
I don't think it needs to be any more complicated. I think this is fine.
I mean, I'm fine to playtest it that way. It's just once we get into the actual flow of combat at this point, if you are faster, you will always, absolutely, always act first.
Which is the whole point of being fast.
Okay. It may be too strong, but we'll play it, and we'll see how it pans out.
And keep in mind, to have 5 ranks each in strength and perception is like nearing max level.
Yeah, this is true. And you can still be taken by surprise sometimes.
Keep calling it perception. It's precision. Strength and precision.
Yeah, precision. I guess surprise attack doesn't have to be before the battle. If the enemy is unaware of you during combat and you come up behind them, you can still get a surprise attack.
Especially if you're sneaky, if you can like disengage and loop around. Especially some of the magic stuff that you can do, like hover around so you're not making footsteps and then land on them or land behind them.
Or bend light around you and be able to be invisible.
Yeah.
I want to make little portals and punch into them and just have my fist come out another portal somewhere so I can like punch and hit a guy in the back of the head while I'm looking at him.
And the wonderful thing is, in our system, you can do that. But the...
Punch up and groin the guy?
I think that would be... Well, you wouldn't even need to punch up. You could just punch forward and have the portal on the ground and have it go...
I know, just the image of going... and seeing it come out going, and just square a guy and just... falls over.
But I think
portal
those
mage. Must make portal mage.
I think those are more suited to an advantage disadvantage system in combat rather than working on the initiative. Because our advantage gives
And
you
then it's
the
part of the
ability to get
story.
a higher delta.
Which allows you to react better in those. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Because it's not a speed thing. Just dumb initiative right down to just how fast you can react. And yeah, I mean, if you have super, super fast reflexes, you probably are going to win. Although, you know, when people have comparable skill levels, there is variance between them. But we'll see how it plays.
I feel like that will probably come down to the delta system.
That's true.
Like
That's true. Because
if
there's a
you've got
role
two
for the
people who are
competition there.
both-
Yeah, they both
if you
made
got
it
two
to
people
the
who are
tip
both
off.
5.
They both made it to the tip off at the same time. They're both not going to win the tip off every time because the delta is going to determine who wins the tip off. Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. Sporting terms. Sporting terms makes it straight. I don't even like basketball, but that was the example that came to mind. That's a nice, simple, straight, dead forward initiative system. We've hashed out melee, we've hashed out ranged, we talked about defense, Pseudo had no arguments there, we've got magic done.
We've got stats.
Do we go on to character creation now?
I think we still need to describe movement, and we still need to at least talk a bit more about skills. We don't necessarily need to make a bunch of skills, but we need to talk about them.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I'm good with that. Let's make them. At least the alpha set. But let's talk about movement. How far can you move in a turn? How long even is a turn? What even is time? Who the hell knows? There we go. Questions.
So one of the things that I think D20 actually does really well with is the speed system. And I think if we steal from them, we could have some good work here. So depending on how long we want a turn to be, and the simplest way to describe it is 5 seconds, because that divides into 60 well, or 6 seconds. I think 30 as a base movement for humans is reasonable.
30 feet in 5 seconds? That's like a walking speed?
Walking, jogging, but not sprinting. And like some of this needs to be adjusted for game balance rather than realism as well. Like I'm pretty sure I could traverse a lot more than 30 feet in 5 seconds, but at the same time, I don't know about doing 60 to 80 sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. What determines how far you can move?
Part of me is like carry capacity, and the other part of me is like, fuck, I hate that system.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not doing math based on carry weight. That's fine. It doesn't add enough depth to the game to be worth the complication that it brings.
So I would say your base speed, which if we have races
what even determines base speed?
Your size and the number of limbs you have contacting the ground.
Really? What about kangaroos?
Not as fast as a cheetah.
Faster than a lot of four-legged things.
But a lot of the four-legged things that it's faster than are smaller and have less muscle mass.
I
Got
bet
shorter
you
legs.
they're faster than bovines, I bet.
And they got longer legs than bovines.
Not bigger.
I don't know
though.
if we need. I don't know if we need something that complicated for.
Well, we're not going.
Size and limbs.
We're not going to be that complicated. We're just kind of discussing what factors actually determine how fast something moves, so we can figure out how we want to create a base.
Horsepower to weight.
I don't want it to be that complicated in the end, but you gotta bring
Yeah,
it
I
somewhere.
Figured we would just base it off the stats we have.
Well, do we want a lot of variability in how far you move?
If I think so, I think that makes sense for stats, depending what the builds are.
So you're thinking somebody who is high strength will probably be able to move farther in a turn?
A combination of dexterity and strength, because with high strength you can put a lot of power behind your legs, but without dexterity, if you do that, you'll trip. But with dexterity, with the combination of the both, you have a lot of power behind your legs moving, but you also know where to place them.
We don't have a dex stat. We have precision.
Precision, close enough. Precision, what I meant. But with precision, you know where precisely to be putting your legs and how to be moving them and stuff like that, so that you can, be fast. Same thing with like swimming. You can be very strong, but if you don't know how to actually move your arms in the water, you're just going to be splashing. Unless you're strong enough to just slap all the water out of the way. Some sort of buff Moses.
That would be how Bort would swim.
Just hits so hard it just creates a little tidal wave behind him that pushes him forward. Just hits all the wonder under him, just rides it, just surfs. Maybe that's how those weird Pokemon surf. Maybe.
That's a fucking fast kangaroo, man.
Yeah, like I said, man, they're fucking fast. You don't want to be in a situation where you have to outrun one. Let's put it that way.
No, because you're gonna lose. So can we derive speed from a formula?
Is movement the run speed or the walk speed we're talking here? Because I think walk speed has a lot less variance. I think most people walk at a fairly consistent pace.
The way that I'm thinking about it is that your base movement is like you're ready for combat or just strolling around not ready for combat. Like you're not sprinting, you're not running. This is just moving around a battlefield. Because if you're not in battle, fuck calculating.
Yeah, 100% agree. At that point, you just have a distance you can travel per hour, per day, based on whatever type of mobility you have. If it's walking, you average it out. If it's a plane or a boat or whatever you use, and every GM can handle that their own way. They don't need us to handhold them through basic math. Get a life, GM.
So,
but your gear or your armor does definitely inhibit your ability to move normally around a battlefield.
So, say you're wearing leather armor that would not give a movement penalty. You're wearing,
Plate mail.
30 kilos of modern tactical gear. You're probably going to be moving slower.
Yeah, or plate mail, it's gonna, even if you could carry the weight of the plate mail without any encumbrance and it doesn't bother you, you still just can't move your joints very well. It wasn't the most mobile of armors. It was not the most wieldy. Still way better than being naked, though.
So I'm thinking the way that we interpret that is for sprinting, we have some way to derive your sprint distance from your stats. Like
Yeah.
if you've got a bunch of strength and a bunch of precision, you can sprint pretty fucking far in a round. I don't know what that
And-
formula is yet, but I want a way to derive it.
and
The-
for endurance rounds.
Yeah, you could even use fortitude to determine how many rounds you can sprint for.
Yeah.
The base movement speed, I think, is affected only by gear in our system. So if you're wearing heavy armor, you lose X amount of base movement, which is then just Steel D20 system. It's really good.
Well, it's basically what we did with the base. It's just took 50 feet or 30 feet per 5-second turn as a base move. That's pretty genuine theft. A turn being 5 seconds, I also like because it does divide so easily. That's not even theft. That's just logic. Gear / armor, it would probably be attached directly to the gear. What effect it'll have for slowdown
Yeah.
on the base.
Yeah, 100%.
So that takes care of base move pretty easy. So really we just have to talk about sprinting as like a subcategory of movement. Base movement is not too bad. How do we want to do sprinting, accelerated movement?
So I like Pseudo's idea of bringing the stats in because I think somebody who is more strong and more precise should be able to sprint farther and for longer.
I 100% agree. But is sprinting just off of your stats, or is it really more of a skill?
I think it should be a multiplier on base movement.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
But
I think it's
but I see it as a skill as well. You can train sprinting.
What you're
Are you-
really doing though is training your legs to be better at it. Like you
Yeah.
don't learn how to run more effectively after, couple hours of practicing and going, I understand.
There is
Well,
a
there
lot
i-
on how you land and how you push off and the
Yeah, that's-
stride you take and
that's kind of falls into what we have for precision though, like form and knowing what precisely to do for certain actions. That's kind of what our precision stat is.
I don't like sprint as a skill. I think sprint enhancement could be a skill. Like if you have a skill that is like a sprinter or something, and it just gives you an additional N number of feet move to your sprint.
well, that's not to say that you would need the sprinting skill to be able to sprint. I'm not saying that because anybody can just get up and run. But if you've actually trained in running and know what you're doing when you're running, you are going to be better at it than somebody who's just strong and fast like you are.
Sure. I don't think it should be a big bonus, and I don't think you should be able to rank it up.
Yeah, I don't know if it'd be useful enough to rank up.
I'm not even saying we necessarily need to do it. I'm just trying
Yeah.
to clarify what sprinting is to me.
I think sprinting is like just a double move, I guess I'd say. So you're not really doing like a combat action. You're just sacrificing the ability to do another action to just be able to move farther within that time.
So if you're moving at your base speed within that 5 seconds, you will be able to. And so this comes back to that, moving and attacking thing. You would have to move, stop, attack, and move. Or you would, once you get to rank 3 of either ranged or melee attacking, you would be able to keep attacking while moving. But that doesn't really change anything unless we say you can attack while sprinting as our rank 3.
Yeah, let's do that. That was the next thing I was going to bring up, is moving with combat and how to deal with that. So let's take a look at that at the same time, and maybe sprinting will come out of it.
Yeah.
How do we want to handle moving in combat? Is it one move and one action? Is it one move plus one action per turn? Question mark.
As the aggressor, that makes a lot of sense. As the defender, less so. Because as part of your turn, you're going to defend against the enemy's attack, potentially move, and then potentially attack back.
You would only get the one action.
I hate it. If all I can do is defend in a turn, I don't want to play.
Well,
like
that's not all you can do. You can do something else and try to avoid the attack entirely.
Right, but that's part of my defensive action, right? Like if all I can do in a turn is stop myself from taking damage.
Okay, let's do this.
That doesn't do me anything.
Combat turn. Let's figure that out. Sounds like there's some disagreement slash misunderstanding slash not being on same page there.
Yeah, I don't think you're suggesting what it sounds like you're suggesting, but what I'm getting out of it is if you are an attacker, you would be able to run up and attack somebody in a turn. Good. Yes, that is good. If you are defender, all you would be able to do in that turn is defend yourself and move. Like you wouldn't be able to do anything to take control of the pace of the engagement.
If I have initiative and somebody says he's charging at me with a sword, I could just backtrack away from, like, if it's far enough away, I could just move at the same time he is. Back, he'll never even get that attack.
Sure, but then he's just going to do it again next turn.
Well, that's just that part. Like, that's the movement. Like, if I can, maybe I go another direction and prepare for it, or head over this way and deal with somebody else, or, you know, it's only if you want to take your time in directly addressing his attack that you're going to stand there, unless you've lost the initiative, at which point you're, you know, moving up or you know, charging with a sword like an idiot. That's never going to be a good idea if you've lost the initiative to charge at somebody who just has the ability to respond to you. Unless, I guess, you're just hoping you're better with a sword. I guess if your Delta is just going to win, it's not the worst idea. They can get creative and get out of it, though, if they're fast enough. And that's kind of what the system's at. So I guess walk through what you think a turn looks like.
So the big thing that I think is missing from what we've described so far, and this could totally be me just missing the point somewhere, is as the defender, I want the ability to have combat on my terms. I want to be able to have agency over what's going on. Because if I am the defender and all I can do is leave or, otherwise stop myself from being hit, I can now not take control of the tempo of the battle at all.
Play out an actual example.
So, let's say say we're tied for initiative. Somebody's charging at me with a sword.
We
As
didn't
a
talk about
defender,
initiative ties. There has to be a tiebreaker. You can't have a tie.
coin flip. The or maybe whoever has the highest precision stat.
Yeah, go to a
Stat and
tiebreaker of
bonus
precision.
or something.
Highest bonus. Well, highest. They're going to be same. Yeah, highest bonus, then highest precision, then highest strength, something like that.
We'll figure something out.
Yeah.
But for the instance of this example, I say I've won the initiative by 1 against this opponent. We are already engaged in combat, so the aggressor on guard and surprise attack bonuses do not apply. The aggressor attacks, going to slash my chest to, just try and kill me. The way that I can respond to that as the defender in that turn, in this set of actions, which will always be the case, is to say, I'm going to defend, and, I don't have rank 5 in my defend skill, so all I can do is defend. That's it. That's all I can do. I can get out of the way, or I can try and, turn his attack away. That's it. That's my options for the turn. That means I cannot in any way affect the course of this battle. As the defender, I would like to be able to affect the course of the battle, which means my response to the incoming attack is, for lack of a better term, the reaction in the D20 system. Then I would also get a movement and a attack of my own, or an action of my own, in order to actually affect the flow of battle.
So I think what we need is combat actions at that point, and have different types of actions.
Because the way I've been modeling this in my head is anytime you're attacked, you can use a defensive ability to deal with that attack. If you have rank 3 in that defensive ability, you can use it multiple times per turn.
Yes, yeah. If you're attacked multiple times in the turn, you can't use it multiple times unless you have that ability. You can only declare 1 at that point that you would use it on. Big agree. Which means this then sort of becomes... No, this is offense. Any number of attacks, unlimited defense actions, or block, in another word. Think of it differently. So you would be able to use any number of defense actions any turn.
Yes.
For that defensive skill.
Yes.
At which point
So
we have 1 defense action, 1 offense action, 1 movement action.
That's what I'm thinking.
I like that. And you can declare them all on the same turn. You have to declare them all on your turn. And then...
And at rank 5, you can use your defense action to deal additional damage on top of your attack action, which is awesome.
Yeah, it turns your defensive action into a defensive and offensive action. So you have a def-off action and an off action. Does that sound right to you, Pseudo?
I'm concerned about the defense action, I guess. I'm trying to envision what that would look like each time. I'm trying to picture in my head.
It's being able to include responding to an attack in some way.
Yeah, because it might feel a bit redundant for like ranged or mages and stuff like that.
Well, you just don't have to take that action at that point. If there's no
Yeah, as long
attack
as
coming at you that you need to deal with, then you don't have to use your defensive action. It's just an unspent
Cool.
action for that round.
All right, as long as that's, I guess, clarified, and then I think that makes sense. That's fine.
And I don't know how we're going to deal with spells for this, but you can totally parry or block an arrow or a bullet. Like you'd have penalties, you'd have disadvantage trying to do that. But if you Delta 5 or Delta 4 it, then okay, you did it.
I think you should probably be able to parry and block magic depending on what it is, especially if you're a mage as well. If they're casting like a fireball at you, and the point of them to be able to do that is them to be able to conjure and control that element, and they throw it at you, and you're able to control it, then you should be able to, catch it and throw it back, kind of, or like redirect it, kind of sense.
Spell parry. Yes.
Yeah, spell parry is an option, but I mean, I think that's going to be more just up to the GM and what's being thrown. Like, can you parry a stream of fire?
I guess it depends on how we want that stream of fire to actually work, right? Like I said, if we're going into that, that CRUD method where you're, updating the state of whatever gas it is that you're using to create fire, and the person you're throwing it at can also, update or delete. If they can just delete it, and they can be like, okay, I delete fire, or delete that thing in front of me, or I create a wall of, stone in front of me, or I, use force to push back whatever force is sending that stuff towards me to, back at them, or stuff like that.
Mage battles are going to be stupid.
It's going to be great.
What I'm stoked to see is if like two mages are working together, they can do some pretty kind of crazy bullshit.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. The thing that I'm somewhat concerned about is a mage fighting a non-mage. Like, I think the non-mage will need some good options to actually get in there and do something about it, because the magic is still extremely strong.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to probably solve that a bit with lore and equipment. I think there's going to have to be some...
There's definitely have to be something to limit magic's functionality in places.
If magic's this prevalent in whatever world this is going to be in, then for it even to make sense for there to be melee, there needs to be some sense of like, some way to deal with it. It's the same sense of like the Star Wars problem where like they wanted melee, but it's a world with guns, and it's like, well, realistically speaking, gun will always win that battle. And it's like, well, we have the ability to, deflect or something like that, or the ability to, everything's lasers and we have a laser sword. And so they solve problems in the equipment sense and with skill. But we can have, special armor, special shields. It's like the whole area of the universe, I guess, or like the setting is aware of how prevalent mages are, and for them to even still be relevant, they would have had to solve that problem as well. So it makes sense for them to, have stuff that's resistant, and then you can build it into lore to why not everyone went towards mages, which is supposedly the strongest thing, and it's going to be kind of personal reasons, or certain beliefs, or civilizations, or whatever. Maybe some people just can't do it, so they've had to adapt by
that's
using technology and stuff like that.
That's usually one of the reasons. Approach is just you're born with it or not.
That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have the ability to completely nullify direct magic. Like, if you are completely incapable of ever using magic, no matter how much training you get, magic can't affect you directly. You are magic immune, and that means you don't get any of the benefits or any of the downsides.
But they can still drop a big brick on you.
Oh yeah, you still gotta dodge the brick.
We'll definitely come up with something for it. There's so many ways to limit it. It'll work. gonna grab some quick sushi here.
Ooh, sushi.
Yeah, I need some. Oh, combos. Maybe there's something good in combos.
So while you're ordering sushi, Sudo, do you have any ideas for deriving the ability to sprint from stats?
I'm just wondering, like, if we want sprinting to be, like, how and when would we want sprinting to be used? And if we really need to make it something that's like I'm going to sprint here, seems more like it's going to be like an action, so we're going to have to, I guess, see how well they do it if we want that, or if we just want it just to be some modifier with a consequence that, based off a certain set of stats. Like I said before, with precision and strength. And if we want it to be like, if you sprint, you can move such and such farther based off how strong and or how strong and precise you are. But, why would someone not be sprinting everywhere is the kind of idea I'm trying to solve.
The thought that I had for a consequence for sprinting is that you don't get your defense or offense actions. Yeah. Your entire round is used up moving.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. It's kind of just like I just need to move, and then I guess it gets hard to, how far they can move, and I guess it's just we have to calculate how far they can move in one turn, anyways. And I'm thinking maybe it's just a flat variable based off that. So because I think it's how far can you move will just be determined by those two stats, anyways, and then the actual sprinting will just be like you get to move 25 or 50% further with that.
So if we want to work off of an average 30 feet per 5 seconds, that means we're going to be the average of the skills is going to be like around 5, we're thinking, 2 to 3 in each for an average person.
Yeah, well, it would, well, 2 6-sided die average out to 7, is it? Yeah, 7. So 2 5-sided would probably be 4, which doesn't divide super nice into 30.
Yeah, but like 30's pretty fast too. I mean, that's still like 20 miles an hour you're going.
Do we want to make base 20?
Actually, no, maybe not. No, I'm thinking of feet per second.
Yeah, 30 feet per second is pretty fast.
That's quick.
Yeah. I was thinking, I'm like, that seems pretty, per 5 seconds. Yeah, that's only about 5 then, or 4 miles. That's a lot more reasonable.
So the way that I was thinking is sprint is a multiplier on your base speed.
Times 2.
Yeah, either 1.5 or times 2.
Yeah, times 2 is good for now, and we can do endurance rounds.
The strength and precision, I think, would come into effect to give you bonuses on top of that.
And there has to be a base movement. Like even if you have 0 in them both, you can still move. You're a Poindexter, string bean, but
you're not fast, and you won't be able to move very far, but you can move.
So it's got to work off of a base plus system.
So I had a thought, but I don't think it's a very good one.
Let's do our minimum situation. If you have 0 strength and 0 precision, how far can you move?
20 feet. 20 feet in a turn.
0 stir plus 0 equals 20 feet per turn.
And then we want our average to be around 30 feet in a turn.
Yep.
5 seconds. So that
how
would be
about
2 feet per stat.
5 strength plus 5 perception. how far do you move?
The way I'm thinking, because of what we want our average to be, it would be 2 feet per stat point. So that would be an additional 20 feet of up to 40. Be 40 feet per 5 seconds with maxed strength and precision.
How far is that? 40 feet per 5 seconds. That's 2 feet per second? No.
It's an additional 2 feet per
6 feet.
second on top of the base
6 feet per second.
of 20.
No, that's 30. 8 feet per second. Math is hard. Shut up.
That's why we get computers to do all our math.
Yeah, no, that's 8 feet per second. Is what you're looking at.
How
in the
fast
top
is
end.
that? Feet per second. 2 miles per hour. 8.
That's 480 feet per minute.
8 feet per second is apparently 5.5 miles an hour.
That's a pretty brisk walking pace.
Yeah, that's like power walking. Like you're going.
Okay. Yeah. I think that works out. Does that sound right to you?
Yep.
Speed equals 20 feet plus 2 feet plus 2 feet times strength plus precision. Yeah.
Yeah. When we actually write this out for other people to use it, we may want to do 2 feet times strength plus 2 feet times precision just to make it a little easier to parse.
Yeah.
But that is mathematically correct.
Yeah. I knew we'd be able to read it. It's fine for our records. And then sprinting 2 times speed for fort grounds.
Yeah, I like it. I feel like most characters are going to want to have one in everything, at least.
Yeah, I mean it does kind of, but it's fun to have weaknesses. It is.
Oh yeah, and I think having 0 there is a very good way to represent like I have min-maxed.
I would totally rock a 0 strength force mage that just uses force to create a force chair for him to sit on and levitate around as it just floats him through. Don't need strength. Just carry myself everywhere in this chair. It's all good.
I want to make Professor Xavier now.
Pretty much what I was thinking. Now, as a quick question before we end up here. Would we actually want to use this melee and ranged system over magic?
I would, because fuck being a mage. But the balancing between magic and non-magical combat, I think, has to come from gear and skills. Like the character that I've been talking about since we tried to do that Shadowrun campaign is somebody who is completely magic immune.
Well, also there's cost to magic, right? Like all of this melee and ranged is happening the turn we declare it. The magic has a work that needs to be done based on the cost of the spell that could take 2 or 3 rounds to finish.
Yeah.
A realistic spell that we're talking about. So it's not going to be like all super instant until you get really high level. Then you'll be able to do those lower update tasks and stuff fairly instantly. But until then, you're going to be protected and in the background. as a mage.
But at the same time, if somebody gets the drop on you and they have a mage, like they can instantly just, say they're a force mage, manipulate the friction on the blood in your veins, and you just suffer cardiac arrest immediately. Like
They'd be good assassins, I agree. But you'd also need life to affect the living creature's friction.
Sure. But like there's nothing that you can do about that as a non-magical person. So we need some way to grant magic resistance, grant magic immunity, which should have its own downsides, and make it so that they can't attack you so directly and so just efficiently snuff you out.
I kind of like the idea just straight up to limit the magic, that if you weren't magically active, you're automatically magic inactive. Like completely, to the point where it can't affect you as you wanted directly. Because there's so much power to indirect magic. Because that ability is there, it forces them to actually be creative with their indirect approaches.
Unless they've got life, in which case, fuck you. Like,
is that even one, or was that just one that from the other one? What did we actually? We did have life. Okay, healing fizz. Okay. There's some mulling that needs to be done there still. And I will mull over the coming time.
Definite mulling.
No. But I do like where we've gotten with combat. Melee side, ranged side. Like you said, I think we could actually recreate like a modern military encounter and stuff pretty well.
Which I think is neat, because for the most part, we've been discussing fantasy settings.
Yep, but it does just kind of apply. Because if you think of combat on a super base level and try to define its super base actions, then the rest of it is just what setting, what weapon do you put in their hand. Otherwise, combat's pretty combat.
I like it. I think we did a good job.
Mm-hmm. So next week, I think we should try to get a topic rather than just doing this over and over again. Have a penalty for casting magic on things you don't have line of sight to.
That doesn't really work the way that we've set up our magic system. So say you had high rank, rank 3 life magic, for instance. You would be able to perceive that there is life there. You would be able to read the exact data around it, which may include its location. I don't know if we discussed that. And then you would be able to update its state. So you would be able to,
heal it,
induce cardiac arrest by just stopping the heart from functioning. Or, not be a murderer and heal it.
Heal it. Yeah. But you're not guaranteed to succeed in that stopping. You've got to make rolls. I think if there's enough to it that you're not guaranteed to get it done, and it takes time to do it, and various stuff like that, then we can actually balance it fairly well that way. Hey, Mole. Like if you have to have line of sight, and it ends up being like 3 or 4 rounds for your character to do the work, and they duck behind a blockade where you don't have line of sight anymore, then your spell just fizzles and you have to start over the next time you can see them. That's sort of an idea.
Yeah, we could have line of sight, and like Deus was saying earlier, if your character is not magically active, then it makes sense for you to be at least magic resistant, if not magic immune. So we're thinking about it. We're not entirely sure how that balance is going to work out, but we know that it's a problem.
I'm so glad that we've inspired you to make a game, Mo. I look forward to seeing what you come up with.
Yeah, that's sick.
Preparation delay. Yeah, that's so how it works is there's a certain amount of work that needs to be done to complete the spell. And then when you're making your dice, the work that gets completed is the delta between your roll and their roll. If you're only ever going to be getting usually 1 to 3 points above theirs. So if you're looking at like a 6 or a 9 cost of work, it's going to be a fairly substantial investment, probably 3 turns to finish it. And if anything happens to prevent you from finishing it in that time, then no finishing.
Then it just doesn't happen.
And I'd imagine casting would involve not moving at all. High focus. Anything that breaks your focus would definitely cause it. So explosions, getting hit, getting shot, anything like that. Anything that physically moves you in some way would definitely interrupt your ability to cast it. We have to discuss if it requires verbal or somatic components still, I guess.
I don't like the idea of stopping a character's intentional movement during casting, but I do like the idea of anything other than intentional movement affecting the cast. So we'll see. We'll also say, like, you can't continue your offensive action, so you can't sprint, sort of thing.
Yeah, you definitely wouldn't be able to sprint and cast. Yeah, I guess it just requires an offensive action every round to continue the rolling. If at any time you could stop that rolling, it ceases.
Then your spell fizzles.
We might be able to look at a cost to the spells too. If each point, like each level, it costs 1 point. So then a level 5 spell would be 5 points.
But what would those points be?
Like a mental attribute. Maybe related to your magic stat. We don't have a magic stat, but like your magic skill. I guess it's just an on-off toggle right now. Are there skills specifically that we relate to it? I guess there are. All 4 of the mental stats are linked to spells in their own ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess your MP could literally be a combination of all 4 mental stats.
How would you regain MP?
Resting. Meditating. Couldn't hear you there.
Sorry, an hour per point sort of thing?
That could work.
I don't know. Mm.
There's lots of different values.
Let's talk about that more next time.
Okay. I'm going to put a little to-do on here then. Discuss costs to magic, points to cost, other limiting factors. There we go.
Yeah.
Proposal, 1 point per mental stat. 1 hour meditation per point restored. Could split casting types into categories. For example, no, there is no level of cast. There's no type of spell like that. There's no such thing as a cantrip or a ray or an evocation. Because you create your own spell based on your level of influence at the time. So like if you're a thought mage, you could sense people's thoughts at level 1 and read people's thoughts. There is no tag, there's no spell. There's no spell to tag.
The full intent is to not have spells written anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, you just have a level of influence over thought, basically. So at first you can sense thoughts around you. Then you can start to read the thoughts around you. Then you can start to update the thoughts around you. And at the end of it, you can just create full-on thoughts in people's heads.
Or delete thoughts.
Yep.
It's like,
Memories,
no.
stuff like that. That's going to be fun. If you're not great in combat, but outside of combat, you are a force.
Dude, Thought Mage Assassin?
Mm-hmm. They would never get arrested. Somebody else would always kill the person for them. Yep. Yep. Sounds rough indeed. Mages sound fun. This is why we have to be so careful to balance them. And also just kind of let the melee get a little overpowered.
Because if you didn't, there would be no reason to not be a mage.
Yeah, we've already made melee fun enough that even if you just don't want to be a mage, you can have a lot of fun on the melee side. So there's already reason to not be a mage, at least.
But not just immediately being useless because of mages is important.
Yeah, the mage system that we're borrowing comes from a world of guns. So that's kind of a lot of their balance. Because if you have to spend some time casting your spell, a 44 Magnum will stop you. and we'll have to talk about health and whatnot too, because you're probably going to die pretty fast, especially as a mage. If you're not putting much into the physical stats and focusing mostly on your mental stats, you probably are going to get mangled pretty fast.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you two, a quick brief discussion on it, but I'm a big fan of the Shadowrun health system.
Big fan, yes. Little shaky on how to implement it in our system. We'll have to talk about that.
Yeah. The crux and the core design philosophy and behind the Shadowrun system is that you don't get more health as you level.
You just get better at not taking damage in the first place.
Yeah. And a Dark Souls approach. Just don't get hit.
Circle ram, hit him in the butt.
Through the legs, in the back with a stick. That is literally how you should do combat in this game as well. That's kind of wonderful. Yeah, we've got that dodging and rolling with the punches and interacting in the melee combat that we really wanted. That's cool. I think we can end now since it's 6:30.
Yeah, I think we did it.
But we will be back, if not tonight, at least next week. Monday. I'm much better. I'm feeling good again. I will be doing Shadows of Yharnam again on Monday.
Ooh.
So
Blood burn.
We will hammer smash Yharnam. And they're a lot harder than they should be with a Kirk hammer.
It's a very slow weapon.
I was kind of worried about them because I was like, this is a good weapon. Like, does a lot of damage. I can handle it, no problem. But there's 3 of them.
And they're fast.
And I'm not. That's exactly what happened. Clong! Gotcha! Smack, 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 smack! Oh. All right, and maybe some Battlefield and maybe some Insurgency tonight, since Rage doesn't have Battlefield yet. Down with some Insurgency, Suda?
Yeah. Always.
Can we peel you away from Battlefield for a little
Most
bit?
Likely.
Play with the
Likely.
guys? All right, Suda's like level 50 something now. Just so you know, Rich.
Trying to hit 56 so I get the Soul Flam so I can use AA on tanks. Then I'm good. Then I've unlocked everything.
And all I want is the 50 cal sniper rifle. That's it. That's all I want.
The SOFLAM works exactly as you think and paints your target for lock-on so that anybody with anything that locks onto something automatically locks onto that and fires at it. So you can use the lock-on AA rockets on tanks and stuff after you SOFLAM them.
That's pretty nuts.
So that's what he's saving up for. And then we'll be able to really deal with tanks. Excellent. Okay, so until later, I'm Deus.
I'm Rage.
And I'm Pseudo.
May all your shots be headshots.